Wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us today. Introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I'm Penny Morales Shaw. I'm a native Houstonian, and I have been practicing law for 19 years. 2 law firms I've owned. And during my practice in law, I'm not new to the legislature. I chose to go to Washington, D.C. for 6 years to fight for human rights laws. And those included women's right to maternal health, children's right to free education, and the one that I think most of us have heard of is IVAWA, the International Violence Against Women Act that was passed in 2015. And we championed that law for about 5 years before it was finally passed. So that's, and I'm involved in local communities like the League of Women Voters, Univisión 45 and Unidad Once, to help the immigrants, especially after the 2016 election. We knew that there was going to be a lot of implications for the immigrant community. And so I've been very involved in social work in the community, mostly after I raised my kids. I have 4 children, and once my youngest turned 18 is when I decided to dedicate myself full-time to public service.
Thank you for that introduction. So the first question is, in what ways have you shown support for and been involved for the fight to expand and protect reproductive health care access? And the follow-up to that is, how have these issues personally impacted you, and what experiences shaped your perspective?
Sure. Well, first I want to say my biggest advocacy in supporting Planned Parenthood is whenever I hear about a bill that's against me, that's against women, that's against equality, I pick up the phone, and I actually have the Capitol on speed dial. I pick up the phone, call the legislators, whether it's Congress, whether it's senators, or whether it's our state capitol, because I think that's the biggest way. Even if you get a recording, they do listen to those, and they have logs where they log them in for pro and against. And so I think it's important to do that. I think it's important that elected officials hear from us, and they know that even though everybody's going to work to put food on the table, pay their bills, take care of their kids, we're paying attention to legislation. We're paying attention to when they're infringing on our community and on our rights. So that's one of the biggest ways. But also, like the other candidates, rallying when there's a rally, supporting. And I'm going to tie that into the second part of your question about how it's impacted in my personal relationship with Planned Parenthood, because it ties in. So as a lawyer of 19 years, one of the things I've done is I have had interns very often, to help them learn about the legal process and to get them familiar so that when they graduate, they're very confident and they're ready to go to work for a firm or open their own practice. And the biggest experience I think I have is when one of my interns, a young woman, came in and she confided in me that she had an unintended pregnancy, and she was worried, she was scared, she was confused. And I can picture her face to this day. And fortunately, because I know what Planned Parenthood does, and I want to give a little shout out because everyone should know that 90% of your work is preventative care, it's health care, and you all do an amazing job for the community. So when people try to change the narrative and say, oh, it's just this one thing, it's so much more than that. And I'm so happy about Dr. Nguyen making the recent statement about being supportive and open to transgender, and really y'all are open to everyone, and that's really what's amazing. You're truly a public health service. So I was really happy to be able to tell her about Planned Parenthood, and she was still confused and scared, but when she came back the next week, she was a totally different person, and it changed her life. And she still stays in contact with me this day, because she was so happy, and she had a child. So that was that. But right now what I do is I do pro bono immigrant workshops to help people understand their rights against raids, against their children being taken by the state if anything happens to them, or just getting their citizenship papers together. And we both taught each other. They shared with me their stories of going to Planned Parenthood and the services they've received, whether it's maternal care, screening, just support in a pregnancy, or if they decide to not have a child. All of that's available to them. They've also, by them telling me their stories, they've empowered me to then share that with all the other people who come in front of me for those services. Because usually, your services, I think for the most part, provide to the most vulnerable communities, those who need it the most.
So, tailing right on that, since 2006, approximately 170 million in state money has been taken away from clinics that provide preventative health care, including family planning services and given to crisis pregnancy centers where they did not ask me to say this, I'm saying this on my own, where they explicitly tell a slew of lies to scared people who are coming in trying to find solutions and answers and credible scientific-based facts. And so the Heidi Group is one of those, and I think if you read the papers, you saw how much money they wasted. And the state's alternatives to abortion program is a dangerous and financially irresponsible program. How do you propose we combat this flood of taxpayer money into sham crisis pregnancy centers?
Electing more progressive women, really. When I talk to champions like Celia Israel, Gina Kalani, Donna Howard, Jessica Farrar, they tell me that they are, we're grossly underrepresented. And because of that, we're always on the defensive. And when there's a majority being able to rule and make laws that's redirecting money to the places they want them to go, to manipulate the message, to scare women, to doubt their own freedom of choice, that's going to happen. But by electing progressive women who are going to stand hand in hand with Planned Parenthood and NARAL and other organizations, and shoulder to shoulder with those kind of champions that we have, the ones that I just named, and others, we can make a difference. We really can. And I think we're getting there. The Texas Tribune did a legislative wrap-up, and they said, because we'd elected more progressive and women, that the issues were more centric and they were going in the direction that we have been fighting for them to go for. But yes, the money is, the control of the money is what harms us the most.
Yes, thank you so much for that. We need more representation across the board of all different communities in our state legislature. This session we just had for the very first time the LGBTQ caucus that was founded. We're very proud of our champions in that caucus, but to my knowledge, there's never been a trans person that's been a member of the state legislature. So there are still many communities all across our state, different identities that are very, very underrepresented, and their issues are not represented well at all in the legislature, and their communities are taken advantage of because of that lack of representation. On time? We went over, but thank you so much,
Thank you,
Penny.